Why absurdity is more powerful than you think. Have you ever asked yourself, what's the point of it all? Life feels like a constant loop. Sometimes wake up, work, eat, sleep, repeat. And then, just when we think we've figured something out, we're hit with something random or chaotic that throws it all into question. This is the human experience, and at its core is what Albert Camus calls the absurd, the clash between our desire for meaning and the universe's silence. But here's the twist: Camus doesn't see the absurd as something to despair over. Instead, he views it as a powerful force, one that can unlock creativity, freedom, and even joy. That's what we're exploring today: why absurdity is more powerful than you think, and how embracing it can change your life. Let's start with what Camus meant by the absurd. Imagine standing in the middle of a vast desert, shouting your deepest questions about life. Why am I here? What's my purpose? Only to hear nothing but silence. That's absurd, our need for answers clashing with a world that offers none. Camus believed this tension is at the heart of human existence. We crave meaning, but the universe operates without purpose or design. So where does that leave us? Most people react to the absurd in one of three ways. The first is denial. They avoid the big questions, distract themselves with routines, or cling to comforting but unexamined beliefs. The second is despair, falling into nihilism and deciding that life is meaningless. But Camus argued that there's a third, more radical response: rebellion. Not rebellion against authority or society, but against the absurd itself. Here's where it gets exciting. Camus's idea of rebellion isn't about solving the absurd, it's about embracing it. He believed that by accepting life's lack of inherent meaning, we free ourselves to create our own. This is where creativity comes in. Think about it: if the universe doesn't impose any rules about what your life should mean, then you're free to define it for yourself. That's not a limitation, it's an opportunity. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you let yourself dream without limits? When you stopped worrying about whether your dreams made sense or fit into some larger plan? The absurd invites us to do just that. By acknowledging life's randomness, we can stop trying to force it into a box and start exploring the full spectrum of what's possible.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
Camus used the myth of Sisyphus to illustrate this. You've probably heard the story. Sisyphus is condemned by the gods to roll a boulder up a hill, only for it to roll back down, repeating this process for eternity. On the surface, it seems like a tragic tale of futility, but Camus saw it differently. He imagined Sisyphus as a hero, someone who, despite his situation, chooses to find meaning in the act of rolling the boulder. One must imagine Sisyphus happy, Camus wrote, because Sisyphus refuses to give in to despair. He owns his struggle and turns it into his purpose. Now, think about your own life. We all have our own boulders to push: jobs, relationships, personal challenges. Are you approaching these tasks as meaningless burdens or as opportunities to create your own sense of purpose? Camus challenges us to take ownership of our struggles, not by pretending they have inherent meaning, but by deciding what they mean to us. But here's the catch: embracing the absurd doesn't mean giving up hope. In fact, it's the opposite. When we accept that life is absurd, we're no longer bound by the pressure to find a singular, ultimate purpose. We can focus instead on living fully in the present moment, on creating beauty and joy wherever we can. This is where freedom comes in. The absurd liberates us from the tyranny of needing everything to make sense. It allows us to experiment, take risks, and follow our curiosity. When we stop searching for universal answers, we can start asking more interesting questions. What kind of life do I want to create? What makes me feel most alive? What can I contribute to the world, not because I have to, but because I want to? This shift in perspective can be profoundly empowering. Instead of waiting for meaning to find you, you become the author of your own story. You can choose to view challenges not as obstacles, but as opportunities to grow and express yourself. And you can approach each day with a sense of wonder, not because life is logical or fair, but because it's unpredictable, vibrant, and absurdly beautiful. Here's a question to think about: what would your life look like if you stopped trying to find its meaning and started creating it instead? What could you accomplish if you embraced the freedom that absurdity offers? Camus believed that by accepting the absurd, we unlock the power to live authentically and creatively. It's not about solving life's mysteries, it's about reveling in them. So, the next time you feel overwhelmed by the randomness of it all, remember the absurd isn't your enemy, it's your greatest ally. From chaos to creativity, how absurdity sparks innovation and imagination now that we've embraced the absurd as a liberating force. Let's go further. What happens when we use absurdity not just to accept life, but to create something extraordinary? Albert Camus believed that once we stop searching for life's inherent meaning, we gain the freedom to invent our own. And in that freedom lies a boundless well of creativity. Let's start with why absurdity fuels creativity. Think about it: when we cling to rigid frameworks, we limit ourselves. We stick to what's known, safe, and acceptable. But absurdity reminds us that the world isn't bound by logic or reason. The universe doesn't follow a script, so why should we? Absurdity allows us to let go of rules and expectations, opening up a space where innovation can flourish. Look at some of the most groundbreaking art, music, and literature in history. Pablo Picasso shattered traditional perspectives with his Cubist paintings. James Joyce defied narrative conventions with Ulysses. The Dadaists turned nonsense into a form of artistic rebellion. What these creators had in common was their willingness to embrace the absurd. They weren't afraid to step outside the boundaries of what made sense and ask, what if? Here's a question for you: how often do you let yourself think outside the box? How often do you push past the fear of being ridiculous and let your imagination run wild? Camus would argue that this fear is precisely what holds us back. Absurdity invites us to experiment, to take risks, and to create without worrying about whether it fits. It gives us permission to fail, and through failure, to discover something entirely new. But creativity isn't just about making art. It's about how we approach life itself. Camus believed that when we embrace the absurd, we can transform even the most mundane tasks into acts of creation. Remember Sisyphus endlessly rolling his boulder? For Camus, the act of rolling wasn't pointless, it was an opportunity to find joy and purpose. The same is true for us. Whether it's how we approach our work, our relationships, or our hobbies, absurdity reminds us to infuse life with our unique perspective. Let's bring this closer to home. Think about a time when you faced a challenge that seemed overwhelming. Maybe it was a difficult job, a relationship that was falling apart, or a personal goal that felt out of reach. Did you stick to the rules, or did you try something unconventional? Maybe you found a creative solution, a way to turn chaos into something meaningful. This is absurdity at work, turning limitations into opportunities. Absurdity also pushes us to question assumptions. Why do we do things the way we do? Why do we believe what we believe? Once you accept that life doesn't come with built-in answers, you're free to challenge everything. This questioning isn't destructive, it's transformative. It helps us see the world through fresh eyes, uncover hidden possibilities, and imagine alternatives we hadn't considered. For Camus, Absurdity wasn't just a personal philosophy, it was a call to action. He believed that living authentically meant engaging with the world creatively and courageously. This doesn't mean rejecting reality, it means shaping it. Camus called this the act of defiance against the absurd. It's not about denying life's randomness, but about asserting your ability to respond to it. In doing so, you reclaim your agency and become the creator of your own reality. But creativity also requires something deeper: playfulness. When we take life too seriously, we box ourselves in. Absurdity, on the other hand, invites us to play, to approach life with curiosity, wonder, and a sense of humor. This doesn't mean avoiding responsibility. It means recognizing that even serious pursuits benefit from an open mind and a willingness to explore the unexpected. Let's pause here for another question. What's something in your life right now that feels heavy or frustrating? What would happen if you approached it with a sense of playfulness instead? How might that change the way you see it or even the outcome itself? Finally, absurdity teaches us the power of paradox. Life is full of contradictions: joy and sorrow, hope and despair, chaos and order. Camus believed that instead of trying to resolve these tensions, we should embrace them. Creativity thrives in paradox. It's where new ideas are born. By holding space for opposing forces, we can create something richer and more nuanced. So, how do we bring this into our daily lives? Start small. Give yourself permission to think differently, to try new things, and to challenge old patterns. Let go of the need to make everything logical and embrace the unpredictability of the process. Whether it's starting a creative project, finding a new way to solve a problem, or simply approaching a routine task with fresh eyes, absurdity can be your guide. The power of absurdity lies in its ability to break down walls and open doors. It reminds us that life doesn't have to be serious or predictable to be meaningful. And when we let go of the need for everything to make sense, we unlock the freedom to create, to turn chaos into beauty, obstacles into opportunities, and absurdity into a source of infinite possibility. Here's your challenge. What will you create with your absurdity? How will you use the chaos of life as a canvas for your imagination? Camus believed that this is where true freedom begins. The question is, are you ready to embrace it? The absurd hero: why embracing absurdity sets you free. So far, we've explored how absurdity fuels creativity and challenges us to rethink life's limitations. But what happens when we take it one step further? What if we not only accept the absurd but fully embrace it as a way of life? Albert Camus believed that in doing so, we become something extraordinary: the absurd hero. What is an absurd hero? Camus described this figure as someone who faces life's inherent meaninglessness without despair and without false hope. Instead, they live with defiance, creativity, and freedom. They don't search for ultimate answers because they know the universe has none to offer. Instead, they focus on the present moment, turning life itself into an act of rebellion against the absurd. Let's unpack this idea of rebellion. To rebel against the absurd isn't to fight it, it's to refuse to let it paralyze you. Camus argued that when we confront the absurd, we have two choices: give up or rise above it. The absurd hero chooses the latter. They acknowledge that life has no preordained meaning, but they don't see this as a loss. Instead, they see it as liberation. Without a fixed meaning to chase, they're free to create their own. Think about this: how often do we let the search for meaning hold us back? We tell ourselves, I'll start living once I figure out my purpose, or I can't move forward until I know what it all means. The absurd hero doesn't wait for clarity. They don't demand certainty before taking action. They dive into life head first. creating meaning through their actions rather than waiting for it to be handed to them. This approach is profoundly freeing. It allows us to focus on what we can control, how we live, what we create, and the relationships we build. Camus believed that by embracing the absurd, we reclaim our autonomy. We stop searching for someone or something to give us meaning and instead take full responsibility for our lives. This isn't just a philosophical idea, it's a call to action. Here's a question for you. What's one thing you've been putting off because you're waiting for the right time or the right answer? What would happen if you let go of that need for certainty and just started? The absurd hero knows that the perfect moment never comes. The only moment we have is now. But living as an absurd hero isn't easy. It requires the courage to face life's chaos without retreating into false comforts. Many people turn to dogma, routine, or distractions to avoid confronting the absurd. They cling to beliefs or habits that feel safe but ultimately limit their freedom. The absurd hero does the opposite. They embrace uncertainty and lean into life's unpredictability, knowing that this is where true freedom lies. This freedom isn't just about rejecting external constraints, it's about freeing ourselves from internal ones. Think about how much of our suffering comes from resisting reality. We wish things were different, cling to the past, or fear the future. The absurd hero doesn't waste time on these struggles. They accept life as it is, in all its chaos and imperfection. And in doing so, they find joy not because life is easy, but because they've stopped fighting it. Camus's absurd hero also teaches us the importance of gratitude. When we let go of the need for life to make sense, we can start appreciating it for what it is: fleeting, unpredictable, and full of possibility. Instead of asking, "What's the point?" the absurd hero asks, "What can I make of this moment?" This shift in perspective turns even the smallest experiences into opportunities for creativity and connection. Imagine waking up each day with this mindset. Instead of dreading the challenges ahead, you see them as opportunities to grow. Instead of fearing failure, you embrace it as part of the process. Instead of waiting for life to give you meaning, you create it yourself. This is the essence of the absurd hero, a life lived fully, bravely, and authentically. But let's be clear, embracing the absurd doesn't mean ignoring life's difficulties. Camus knew that suffering is an unavoidable part of the human experience. The absurd hero doesn't deny this, they face it head-on. But by refusing to let suffering define them, they transform it into something meaningful. Every obstacle becomes a chance to practice resilience. Every loss becomes a reminder to cherish what we have. So, what does this mean for you? How can you live as an absurd hero in your own life? Start by asking yourself, what's holding me back? Is it fear, doubt, or the need for certainty? And what would happen if I let go of those constraints and embraced the absurdity of it all? Camus believed that this is where true freedom begins, not in finding answers, but in creating your own. The absurd hero doesn't need life to make sense to live it fully. They take each day as it comes, turning chaos into beauty, challenges into opportunities, and absurdity into a source of power. Are you ready to become the absurd hero of your own story? The choice is yours, and the time to start is now. Living the absurd: how to find joy in a chaotic world. As we reach the final part of our exploration, it's time to ask the most important question: how do we live as absurd heroes in our daily lives? Albert Camus believed that embracing the absurd isn't just a theoretical exercise, it's a way of being, a lifestyle that transforms how we experience the world. When we stop demanding that life makes sense and start celebrating its unpredictability, we discover a deeper kind of joy, one rooted in creativity, freedom, and presence. To live the absurd is to reject resignation. Many people, faced with the absurd, retreat into nihilism or apathy, believing that if life has no inherent meaning, then nothing matters. But Camus argued the opposite: the absence of meaning isn't a curse, it's an invitation. It allows us to shape our lives without constraints, to invent purpose rather than inherit it. Imagine how freeing that is. Instead of trying to fit your life into a mold, you get to create it from scratch. But how do we do this in practice? The first step is to stop looking for a grand, singular meaning. Life isn't a puzzle to be solved, it's a canvas to be painted. Every choice, every experience, every moment is a brushstroke. The absurd hero doesn't ask, "What does it all mean?" They ask, "What can I create with what I have?" This mindset shifts our focus from outcomes to process, from answers to possibilities. Think about your daily routines, the small, seemingly mundane tasks that make up most of your life. These are often the moments we overlook, waiting for something bigger or more important to come along. But the absurd hero finds meaning in the ordinary. Washing dishes, commuting to work, or having a conversation can all become acts of rebellion against the absurd opportunities to bring intention, creativity, and presence to the moment. Camus also emphasized the importance of passion. To live the absurd is to throw yourself fully into life, even knowing it's temporary and unpredictable. This means pursuing the things that light you up, not because they'll last forever, but because they matter now. Whether it's a creative project, a relationship, or a personal goal, passion fuels our ability to live authentically. What are you passionate about? And are you giving yourself permission to pursue it? Living the absurd also requires gratitude. When we stop expecting life to provide meaning, we can start appreciating it for what it is: fleeting, chaotic, and beautiful. Every moment becomes a gift, not because it's perfect, but because it's ours. Camus called this an invitation to live. It's a reminder that even in the face of life's struggles, there's joy to be found in simply being alive. Finally, living the absurd is about connection. The absurd hero doesn't isolate themselves, they engage with the world. They build relationships, contribute to their communities, and share their creativity with others. By doing so, they amplify the freedom and joy they've found, inspiring others to embrace the absurd as well. So, here's the challenge Camus leaves us with: can you let go of the need for life to make sense? Can you embrace its absurdity and use it as a source of freedom and creativity? The absurd doesn't have to be a burden. It can be your greatest ally, helping you live fully, boldly, and joyfully. Life is chaotic. Life is unpredictable. Life is absurd. But that's exactly what makes it beautiful. The question isn't what does it mean, but what will you make of it? The choice, as always, is yours.